Long before history learned to keep records, before kings carved their victories into stone, there was a city rising from the southern plains of Mesopotamia. It stood between rivers that flooded and withdrew like slow-breathing lungs. Mud bricks stacked carefully, reeds whispering in the heat, smoke drifting upward at dusk. This city was called Uruk, and in Uruk people believed something quietly radical, that power could wear the face of a woman. They did not imagine her as distant or gentle. They imagined her alive, hungry, watching. Her name was Inanna. Not a metaphor, not an idea, a presence. If you listen closely to the earliest hymns, you don't hear worship shaped by fear alone. You hear intimacy, familiarity, even tension, like a city learning how to live with something greater than itself. Inanna was not born into a peaceful world. She emerged at the same moment civilization itself was learning how to stand upright. And that timing matters. Because Inanna was not simply worshipped by the first city, she reflected it. A goddess shaped by walls, markets, desire, rivalry, ambition, and risk. A goddess who belonged to streets as much as to stars. Before we go any further, take a moment. Settle in. Let the pace slow. If these quiet journeys into ancient worlds bring you comfort, consider subscribing to Whispers of the World, a place for long stories, soft histories, and ideas meant to drift with you into sleep. Now, back to Uruk. Uruk did not rise gently. Around 4000 BCE, human life was changing faster than it ever had before. Villages were becoming cities. Trade routes stretched farther. Writing was beginning to form. Not yet poetry, not yet law, but marks made to remember grain, sheep, labour. Order was being invented, and order is never neutral. Someone benefits, someone loses, someone watches. Inanna, according to the oldest stories, did all three. She was known as the Lady of Heaven, yet her feet were firmly planted on earth. Her earliest temples were not hidden on mountaintops or distant deserts. They stood at the heart of the city, visible, central, unavoidable. This alone tells us something important. Inanna was not a background god. She was involved. Her primary sanctuary, the Inanna precinct, was not just a place of prayer. It was a centre of administration, ritual, sexuality, music, and power. Priestesses walked its courtyards, hymns echoed against brick walls warmed by the sun, offerings of grain, oil, and incense flowed daily. To serve Inanna was to serve the city itself. But who was she really? The Sumerians described her as the daughter of Nanna, the moon god. That made her the sister of Utu, the sun. Night and day in her bloodline, cycles, light and shadow, growth and decay. Some scholars suggest this divine family mirrored the rhythms of the sky, but it may also have mirrored the rhythms of human life. Work and rest, passion and consequence, desire and discipline. Inanna contained all of it. She was young in many stories, vibrant, restless, uncontained. Unlike older, more static gods, she moved, she travelled, she wanted things. And when a goddess wants something, it changes the shape of the world. In early hymns, she is praised not just for beauty, but for authority. Kings did not rule without her favour. Cities did not prosper without her attention. Yet there is something striking in how she is spoken to. Not with trembling distance, but with closeness, almost negotiation. People pleaded with Inanna, bargained with her, appealed to her moods. This suggests a deity who could be generous and unpredictable, which made sense. Life in early cities was unpredictable too. Floods destroyed crops, droughts followed abundance, enemies appeared suddenly, disease moved silently. Inanna embodied that uncertainty, not as chaos but as intensity. She did not promise peace, she promised experience, love that overwhelms, war that reshapes borders, ambition that lifts or ruins. Her symbols tell the same story. The eight-pointed star, often associated with Venus, marked her presence. Venus does not stay fixed in the sky. It disappears, returns, shines brightest just before dawn or after sunset. Inanna was like that, appearing when boundaries blurred, and Uruk needed a goddess like her, because Uruk was a city of thresholds, between nature and structure, between instinct and law, between survival and excess. Inanna ruled that space. She was worshipped not only as a protector, but as a force that pushed people beyond what felt safe. This may be why her earliest devotees included priestesses who performed rituals of sacred sexuality, acts meant not for pleasure alone but for cosmic balance. Fertility was not sentimental, it was survival. To unite with Inanna, symbolically or ritually, was to invite life itself to continue. Yet even here there is restraint in the texts. They hint more than they declare. They leave space for interpretation, perhaps intentionally. The Sumerians were not explaining Inanna, they were living with her. Over time, as Uruk grew, so did her myths. She absorbed roles, claimed domains, became more complex rather than more refined. She did not simplify, and this complexity made her dangerous. Because a goddess who governs both love and war does not fit comfortably into moral categories. She does not reward only the gentle. She does not punish only the cruel. She responds to intensity, devotion, desire, defiance. Inanna was known to test those who approached her, especially rulers. Kings boasted of her favour, but they also feared losing it. To fall from Inanna's grace was not just political failure, it was cosmic rejection. Some later hymns suggest that even the gods watched her carefully, not because she was weak, but because she was bold. And perhaps this is why her story survived when so many others faded. Inanna was not perfect. She was not calm. She was not predictable. She felt real. As the night deepens, imagine Uruk at rest, torches dimming, voices quieting. Somewhere in the city, a priestess whispers her name, not loudly, not dramatically, but as one might speak to a force that listens even when uninvited. Inanna. The city sleeps beneath her gaze. And this is only the beginning. When you're ready, we'll continue into the heart of her dual nature, where love and war share the same breath. There is a comfort in simple gods. A god of storms who only destroys. A god of harvest who only gives. Clear roles, predictable outcomes. Inanna was never that kind of deity. To the people of ancient Mesopotamia, she was both invitation and threat, sometimes in the same moment. Her presence could bless a marriage or dismantle a kingdom. And the stories never ask us to choose which version is the true one. They insist that both are. Inanna ruled over love, but not the quiet kind. Not affection that settles gently into routine. Her love arrives suddenly. It overwhelms. It consumes. It rearranges lives without asking permission. And she ruled over war, not as a distant tactician, but as a force that stood on the battlefield itself, armoured, radiant, unafraid. This pairing feels contradictory to modern ears. Love and war are often treated as opposites. One heals, the other breaks. But for the Sumerians, these forces were intimately connected because love creates attachment, and attachment creates conflict. Inanna understood that. Her earliest hymns describe her moving freely between bedrooms and battlefields, one moment adorned with jewels and perfume, the next wearing weapons, standing over fallen enemies. The same goddess, the same power. She did not change masks, she expanded them. In some texts, she is described as laughing during chaos. Not cruel laughter, but something closer to exhilaration. The kind that comes from momentum, from feeling alive at the edge of control. This made her terrifying and irresistible. Kings sought her favor before campaigns, believing that her presence could decide the outcome of wars. But her blessing was not guaranteed. She did not reward obedience alone. She rewarded boldness. Inanna admired those who dared, who acted decisively, who claimed what they wanted without apology. This included lovers as much as warriors. Her hymns speak openly of desire, of bodies, of longing, not in metaphor, but in language that feels immediate, almost startlingly honest. To love under Inanna's domain was to risk transformation. She did not promise safety, she promised intensity. This is why her cult was unlike any other. Her priestesses were not secluded figures hidden from the world. They were visible, influential, and deeply integrated into civic life. Some performed rituals that symbolized the union between goddess and king, a sacred marriage meant to renew the land and legitimize rule. These ceremonies were not symbolic theatre alone. They carried political weight. If the goddess accepted the king, the city prospered. If she withdrew her favor, instability followed. Power flowed through intimacy, and intimacy flowed through power. Inanna blurred these lines deliberately. She did not separate the sacred from the physical. She did not place morality above desire, or desire above consequence. She allowed them to coexist, uncomfortably, honestly. There are moments in the myths where she appears compassionate. She listens, she comforts, she grants fertility and joy. And then, without warning, she destroys. Enemies are crushed, cities are humbled, lovers are abandoned, not out of cruelty, but out of alignment with her nature. Inanna was not bound to human ethics. She was bound to force, to momentum, to the surge that propels life forward, whether gently or violently. Some scholars suggest that Inanna's duality reflected the realities of early urban life. Cities depended on love, bonds, families, alliances, but survived through war, defense, conquest, intimidation. To live in a city was to accept both. Inanna embodied that truth without softening it. She was worshipped because she was honest. The hymns do not apologize for her contradictions. They celebrate them. They call her the one who turns man into woman and woman into man, the one who dissolves boundaries and rebuilds them differently. She was fluid long before the word existed, unfixed. And because of that, she frightened even other gods. There are hints in the texts, subtle, never explicit, that Inanna's power made the divine order uneasy. She did not inherit all of her domains. Some she claimed, and she was proud of it. This pride is essential to understanding her. Inanna knew her worth. She announced it. She demanded recognition. She punished those who dismissed her. In a world where humility was often praised, Inanna's confidence was radical, and perhaps dangerous. As night settles deeper, imagine her standing at the edge of Uruk's walls, the city behind her, the open land ahead, love and war at her fingertips, desire and destruction equally available. She does not hesitate. She never did, because hesitation belongs to those who fear consequence. Inanna accepted consequence as part of existence, and that acceptance made her immortal, not just as a goddess, but as an idea that refused to be simplified. When you're ready, we'll follow her next bold act. The moment she decided that power itself was not evenly distributed and chose to take it. There are many ways to hold power. Some seize it openly through strength or conquest, others inherit it quietly wrapped in tradition, and some take it with a smile, a drink, and a plan already unfolding beneath the surface. Inanna belonged to the third kind. By the time this story begins, she was already revered. Uruk prospered under her watch. Her name was spoken with confidence, not doubt. And yet, according to the ancient texts, she was not satisfied. Not because she lacked honor, but because she understood something unsettling. Power was being stored elsewhere. In the deep waters of the south, in the ancient city of Eridu, lived Enki, god of wisdom, creation, and hidden knowledge. He was older than Inanna, quieter, less visible. While she ruled crowds and ceremonies, Enki ruled systems, and systems last. Enki was said to possess the Me, sacred principles that governed everything from kingship and justice to art, music, sexuality, craft, and even deception. The Me were not laws written on stone, they were closer to operating codes of reality itself. Without them, civilization could not function. With them, it could transform. Inanna knew this. The myths do not describe her discovering the Me by accident. There is no confusion, no sudden revelation. She already understands what Enki holds and what it means. So she travels to Eridu, not as a conqueror, as a guest. She arrives adorned, confident, radiant. Enki welcomes her warmly. They drink together. They talk. Laughter fills the room. Boundaries soften. This is not a battle, it is a conversation. And conversations, Inanna knows, are where the most important exchanges happen. As the night deepens, Enki, perhaps drunk, perhaps charmed, perhaps simply careless, begins to gift her the Me one by one. Each transfer feels ceremonial, generous, irreversible. Kingship, truth, descent into the underworld, victory in war, music, sexuality, craftsmanship, the foundations of civilization itself. Inanna accepts them all, calmly, graciously. She does not rush. She does not question. She does not apologize. By the time Enki realizes what has happened, it is too late. Inanna is already leaving, carrying the Me back toward Uruk. This moment is often described as theft, but the story itself resists simple judgment. Enki does not curse her. He sends messengers to retrieve the Me, but even they fail. The transfer, once given, cannot be undone. Some interpretations suggest Enki allowed it. Others imply regret. The texts remain ambiguous, and that ambiguity feels intentional, because this was not just about possession, it was about where power belonged. Inanna returns to Uruk, and with the Me in her keeping, the city changes. Culture accelerates, arts flourish, authority sharpens. The city becomes not just large, but influential. Civilization consolidates around her. And here the story becomes quietly unsettling. Inanna did not steal fire for humanity like later myths would suggest of other figures. She did not act purely out of generosity. She acted out of alignment with her identity. She believed power should be lived, not hidden. Enki's wisdom was deep but static, stored, preserved. Inanna's was kinetic. She brought the Me into the streets, into ritual, into conflict, into desire. She made civilization visible, noisy, unstable, and alive. Some scholars see this myth as a reflection of shifting political power, from older religious centers to rising cities like Uruk. Others read it psychologically, a story about youth challenging age, action confronting contemplation. But when read slowly, late at night, the myth feels more intimate. It feels like a goddess claiming authorship over her world. Inanna did not ask permission. She did not wait her turn. She saw imbalance and corrected it. This act defines her more clearly than any hymn of praise. It shows her intelligence, her confidence, and her willingness to risk consequences. Because she knew Enki could retaliate. She knew the gods might object. She went anyway. And perhaps that is why her power endured. Because Inanna was not content to represent civilization. She insisted on shaping it. As the night grows quieter, imagine the boats carrying the ME gliding toward Uruk under starlight. The rivers reflect the sky. The future hums beneath the surface. Something irreversible has occurred. The world will not return to how it was. And Inanna knows it. But even gods must pay for boldness, because with power comes imbalance, and imbalance demands correction. Soon, Inanna will face a place where her authority does not reach, a realm without light, without desire, without negotiation. The underworld awaits. There are places even gods avoid, not because they are guarded, but because nothing returns unchanged. The Sumerians called it Kur. Later texts would call it Irkalla. The underworld was not a place of flames or punishment. It was quiet, heavy, a realm of dust and silence where the dead existed without joy or suffering, simply diminished. It was ruled by Ereshkigal, Inanna's sister, and sisters in these myths are never simple reflections of one another. Where Inanna was movement, Ereshkigal was stillness. Where Inanna ruled life's intensity, Ereshkigal ruled its ending. The reasons for Inanna's descent are never fully settled. Some texts suggest she went to attend a funeral, the death of Ereshkigal's husband. Others imply something more deliberate, almost defiant, a test, a challenge, a refusal to accept boundaries. The myths do not clarify, they let the silence speak. What is clear is that Inanna does not stumble into the underworld. She prepares. She adorns herself with every symbol of her power: crown, necklace, breastplate, rings, robes. Each item is chosen. Each is deliberate. She looks not like a mourner, but like a queen entering foreign territory. Before leaving, she gives instructions. If she does not return, help must be sent. This detail matters. Inanna knows the risk. She goes anyway. At the first gate of the underworld, she is stopped. The gatekeeper does not bow. He does not argue. He follows protocol. For Inanna to pass, she must remove one symbol of power. She agrees. At the second gate, another item is taken. Then another, and another. 7 gates, 7 losses. By the time she reaches the throne of Ereshkigal, Inanna stands naked, stripped of everything that defined her authority in the world above. No crown, no weapons, no jewels, only herself. And this is where the story shifts. Ereshkigal does not greet her sister warmly. There is no embrace, no forgiveness. The texts speak of judgment, of Inanna being struck down, turned into a corpse, and hung on a hook. The language is stark. For 3 days and 3 nights, Inanna is dead. Not sleeping, not dreaming, absent. The world above begins to feel it immediately. Fertility halts. Desire fades. Life loses its momentum. Without Inanna, nothing urges forward. This is not punishment. It is imbalance. Eventually, help comes, not through force, but through empathy. Enki, hearing of Inanna's fate, creates beings who understand pain because they mirror it. They descend not to command but to listen. They sit with Ereshkigal in her agony. They echo her suffering without trying to fix it. And something rare happens. Ereshkigal softens. Inanna's body is released. She rises, not triumphant, not radiant, but altered. Resurrection is not free. For Inanna to return to the world above, someone must take her place. A life for a life. Escorted by demons, she ascends, searching for a substitute. Those who mourn her are spared. Those who do not are marked. And this is where the story becomes painfully human. When Inanna finds Dumuzi, her lover, seated on a throne, dressed in finery, unmoved by her absence, she chooses him. The decision is swift, unforgiving. Dumuzi is taken. Later myths soften this moment, adding cycles and compromises. Half the year in the underworld, half above. Seasons begin to turn. Death becomes temporary. Return becomes possible. But the core truth remains. Inanna came back, and she was not the same. The goddess who ruled love and war had faced a power she could not dominate. She had been undone and reassembled. As the night deepens, sit with this image. A goddess who dared to enter death, who accepted loss, who paid the price, not to conquer the underworld, but to understand it. And when she returned, the world learned something quietly profound. Even the most powerful forces must pass through darkness. Next, we'll follow what came after. How Inanna's story didn't end with her death, but spread across empires, names, and centuries, refusing to disappear. Names change when stories travel. Accents shift, rituals adapt, cities fall, and new ones rise on their remains. But some figures move through time untouched by erasure. Inanna was one of them. As Sumer gave way to Akkad, and Akkad to Babylon and Assyria, her name softened, reshaped itself, and returned as Ishtar. Different sound, same presence. The hymns grew louder, the temples larger, the iconography sharper. Yet beneath the new language, the goddess remained familiar. Still radiant, still dangerous, still unwilling to be contained. As Ishtar, she ruled not just cities but empires. Kings carved her image into stone reliefs, showing her armed, winged, standing atop lions. She was invoked before battle and after victory. She was thanked for conquest and feared for the chaos she could unleash if neglected. Empires understood her value because empires, like cities, are born from desire and maintained through violence. Ishtar was honest about that. Her love myths deepened. Her war hymns sharpened. She became more explicitly sexual, more explicitly martial, not because cultures became cruder, but because power demanded clarity. Ishtar did not pretend that domination was gentle, and still people loved her, not from comfort, but recognition. Even the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest surviving stories, couldn't avoid her gravity. When Ishtar desires Gilgamesh and is rejected, she does not respond with wounded silence, she responds with cosmic consequence. The bull of heaven is unleashed. Cities shake, fields are destroyed, lives are lost. Modern readers often judge this harshly. But the ancient world understood something else. Rejecting a god is not a personal boundary, it is a disruption of balance. Ishtar does not punish rejection out of vanity. She reacts to rupture. This pattern follows her everywhere she appears. As trade expanded, her image travelled beyond Mesopotamia. In the Levant, she echoed in Astarte. Across the Aegean, traces of her influence surface in Aphrodite, a goddess of love whose origins carry faint memories of war, sea crossings, and older rites. Even when softened, even when romanticized, the core survived. Desire as force, beauty as authority, love as something that changes power structures. By the time later religions rose, structured, moralized, centralized, Goddesses like Inanna became uncomfortable reminders of an earlier worldview, one where the sacred was not orderly, one where divinity was not always just. So she faded, not erased, repressed. Her temples were abandoned, her priestesses disappeared from record, her stories were absorbed, altered, or dismissed as myth. And yet she lingered, in symbols, in archetypes, in the quiet recognition that love and conflict are inseparable parts of being human. Inanna's true legacy is not found in statues or ruins. It lives in the refusal to simplify power. She reminds us that creation is not clean, that desire builds as often as it destroys, that life insists on movement even when movement leads through loss. She was never meant to be comforting. She was meant to be true. As the night settles fully, imagine her not as a distant goddess, but as a pattern, repeating wherever humans gather, build, love, fight, and remember. Inanna, Ishtar, a name whispered differently but never forgotten. If you've stayed with this story until the end, thank you for listening, for giving space to an ancient voice still echoing through time. And if these quiet journeys through forgotten histories bring you peace, you're always welcome here in Whispers of the World. Rest now. The story has returned to silence.